Welcome. This is the Eastern Influenced Corporate Leader podcast, hosted by Alana May Mitchell, where each episode we tune in to Eastern wisdom.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Eastern Influence Corporate Leader. I am so delighted that you're tuning in today, and we have a wonderful guest who is so insightful in terms of the topic of leadership. So without saying anything more, I'd love to introduce our guest for today, which is Nathy Gaffney. She has had what can be politely termed as a diverse portfolio career. A professional actor with a comedy cabaret performer background for over 20 years. She's also spent time working behind bars and drinking in them, waiting on tables and dancing on them, being a nightclub door biatch, barista and celebrity impersonator. These days, she's treading the boards for the boardroom and is working as a facilitator and executive coach with Phuel Australia, where she still enjoys a captive audience, albeit minus the feathers and sequins. Her role sees her working with major organizations such as Westpac, Mirvac, Lendlease, Ventia, Facebook, amongst others, in areas of leadership development, resilience, communication, innovation, diversity, and inclusion. Nathy is a champion for women in the workplace, having designed the Wayfinder program for early career, high potential women who step into their power in their careers. Her first book, The Gap Years, a memoir about the end of her marriage, descent into bankruptcy, and finding love in the arms of a mountain climber 20 years her junior, was published in 2019. Now, her second book, The Confidence Maze, is a personal development book aimed at building confidence for young women. She is also the host of Suck It and See podcast, which celebrate life's just in perfect timing, life's messy mistakes through the lens of hope and humor. Nathy is wedged between the city and the sea in Sydney's eastern suburbs with her teenage son and adventure-seeking partner. Nathy, it's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Alana. And I'm so sorry that was such a mouthful for first thing in the morning.
Oh, it's perfectly okay. I think it's wonderful. I mean, occasionally there's a little slip up that I'll take out. I do keep the conversation pretty whole because, like sometimes when you're trying to say something that's like a tongue twister, it's totally okay.
Well, I did realize listening to someone actually read out my bio, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of alliteration and curly little tongue twistery things in there. So my apologies for that.
No problem. I think it's wonderful that you've got these leadership programs happening, that you've got all this rich experience in, like, not only being a leader in your facilitation work, also coaching leaders. So I'd love to tap into just looking future state. So we've got where leadership is. We've had all the impacts that have happened or transformations that have happened with COVID. I'd love to hear from you. Where do you feel the future of leadership is heading?
Look, great question, and it's one we almost pose to ourselves daily at Phuel, and indeed with the leaders that we work with across, as you heard in the bio, across a range of organisations and industries, from everything from finance to PR and advertising to works and infrastructure and pharmaceuticals and kind of everything that wedges in between all of that. The biggest shift that I have seen and experienced in leadership, what people are looking for in leadership, but also the capabilities and competencies that future leaders are needing to be skilled up in, is innovation and creative thinking. So it's all about, it's what you're doing with the grey matter. Okay. And I want to be really clear, it is, the work that we do in the leadership space is not in that technical space. We assume that there is a level of subject matter expertise that a leader has achieved to get where they're at.
Sure.
We come in with those core skills It's everything that we say ignites the human factor. And what we've found is that it's the capacity to build relationships. It's the capacity to lead with vulnerability, not just credibility and reliability. It's vulnerability. It's that, how do I connect with people? And to be able to actively engage with their emotional intelligence. And if emotional intelligence is lacking, to understand why it's so important, to understand how to build it, and to understand how to use it. So they're the big things. It's that how do I think about problem solving, and how do I build relationships? Because essentially, as a leader, you are delivering results through the efforts of others. Now, are you at the back kind of whipping them over the finish line every day? Or are you leading by example? You know, are you ahead of them on the track going, this way, people, this way? Or are you with them? Are you with them on the road saying, these are the challenges we are facing. Let's walk through this together. Hey, here's a hurdle. Here's an obstacle. I don't have all the answers. Let's collaborate and then lead from there. So it's that it really is shifting. There was that leadership, you know, years ago, early last century, which it was that leadership from above, that autocratic, the voice of authority, whether it came from culture, class, or education. We looked at people above and went, well, they are the singular point of truth. And then as we've moved through the 20th century, leadership became a little bit more aspirational. You know, I look at you and I want to be like you. Whereas now we are apart. You know, you look at the Richard Bransons, you know, they're not up there strutting around the stage. They're sitting on a stool. They've got an open neck shirt on. They're asking questions as much as they're answering them. And that is where we see this notion of leadership going.
I want to expand on that some more, because I love what you're sharing there. And how with the different, what I call them as situations. So you have the, what I've spoken about before is when you have a person who is in an emergency situation, someone telling you what to do is actually a really great thing to have, because, you know, you need to act or you're at risk. And then you have, as you wonderfully spoke through, is you have the person out the front, like giving more direction. So that might be, maybe we call that the visionary of, this is the vision that we're heading towards. And then you have this really interesting style that you've mentioned, which is more like a come with me, walk with me, I'm on the journey with you. And so the other aspect of that is obviously asking questions and eliciting the answers from your team, because being really real, we don't know all the answers all the time, as you just said. So I'd love to hear more about, you know, how does someone develop the awareness of which leadership style in which moment to bring the best experience and the best thing out of their people? How do you develop that capacity to pull on the leadership styles that you've mentioned there?
Yeah, that's it. Look, again, another great question. One thing we have discovered is that leadership isn't cookie cutter. Not one style fits all, and not one approach is appropriate for every situation. So it's this notion of agility in leadership and being able to, and I know we've used this word a lot during the last the 18 months of a pandemic, but you know that. Oh, there it goes. There goes my sign.
We just had a sign fall over.
We did. Okay. And so
it's fine. I'm going to edit that part.
This is where we pivot. We adjust to the current surroundings. And I think, you know, that's a perfect metaphor for how we need to lead. We need to be able to adapt in the moment and respond to any given situation. And that's in externally imposed situations. There's a model that we use that's been borrowed, and it's probably certainly it's almost at odds with the Eastern influenced leader, but it is such a good model, and that's a model called VUCA. Are you familiar with it?
I haven't heard of that.
Okay, so it's an acronym that was borrowed from the military.
Oh,
and it's so interesting when it's applied to leadership, because the acronym is V stands for volatility, U stands for uncertainty, C stands for complexity, and A stands for ambiguity. And so each of those external environmental situations leaders can find themselves in require a different response. And so we look at, like, so what happens in a market that is volatile? It's like, well, in a market that is volatile, you might know what the elements are that are operating within, but you can't track where they're going up or down. Uncertainty is you kind of don't know what you don't know, maybe emerging markets that haven't been tried and tested. And complexity, obviously, is lots and lots of, moving parts. And ambiguity is we can sort of forecast, but we can't really see what's around the corner. And what we know is that leaders need to be able to pivot. And it comes back to this, Alana, I think, is your thinking. Because if you're fixed on a goal, and we all get them, we get budgets, we get targets, we get KPIs, we know what the outcome needs to be. But if we're stuck on the methodology that we're going to use to get there, that's when things can go off the rails. And it's teaching people to become more flexible and adaptable and agile in the way they approach problem solving, goal setting, decision making, collaboration, all of those things. And that is a competency. They are capabilities that we teach people to challenge the way they think about things so that they can create different perspectives. They can tap into and utilize and leverage the cognitive diversity that they have within teams. I mean, it's great to think that you want to surround yourself with a team of people who kind of talk like you and think like you and see the world through the same lens as you. But then you'll come up with homogenous solutions to complex problems. So it's creating that cognitive diversity and that cognitive malleability to be able to see things through different lenses.
Yeah, right. And I really enjoyed that. And I feel like with the what I want to get to is the leader being able to hold the space to go through that process with their team.
Yeah.
How, because it feels like this version of the leader is they've got the awareness of the market, they've got the awareness of the team, they've got their own things going on. And I'm getting this image of someone juggling many balls at the one time because they've got all these different push and pull dynamics going on. How do you still stay as a leader, centered and calm in that when you've got all these dynamics that you've just gone through going on? What are your tips there?
It's a challenge. And I think that another one of the things that has become, in the World Economic Forum says that emotional intelligence is one of those key skill sets moving towards 2025 that the job market is looking for. And it was very interesting. I've been working on a leadership program with a massive infrastructure company. And they did, so it was a 7-module program, and they had to talk about at the end and on the graduation day is what they've learned. And we had, I had a more mature gentleman at the, he's probably 60, so he's been around for a while. And he said at the end of it, he said, I thought I'd heard it all. He said, I didn't really know what emotional intelligence was and what its relevance could bring to my role as a leader, given that it's always been about what you do, how you do it, when you get it done, et cetera, et cetera. And he talked about he talked about this notion of self-awareness and it's not just, well, here's my job as a leader, here's a set of instructions, I'm going to delegate that task to you, and et cetera, et cetera. He talked about, how do I look after myself so that you know, when there are storms going on, people have got a calm center to come to. You know, how am I aware of when I'm under pressure? When, you know, how is that impacting those around me? How is it impacting my ability to lead? How is it impacting my ability to influence the people that I need to have on board, to stay with the frustration, to go the hard yards, to go the distance? And that was something that, you know, here was a guy who's been in the workforce for 40 years, talking about the power of self-awareness and emotional intelligence in leadership. He said, oh, you know, I wasn't sure. He said, oh, I thought I might sharpen the sword a bit, but he said, I was really amazed at how much I've gotten out of this program and understanding stuff about myself.
Oh, that's
and
incredible.
How that impacts leadership. Yeah.
So incredible to have all those years of experience and then to still be still be learning, and that speaks to his mindset as well, is that
and if I can add in there something else that has come in since COVID and the pandemic started, and that was resilience and self-care. This understanding that, you know, and I know it's a bit of a platitude, you know, we hear it, but you can't fill others from an empty cup. And, you know, a lot of the core skills or soft skills that Phuel brings in, you know, I say, look, you know, we're not bringing rocket science, you know, this is not rocket science. And sometimes we're talking to rocket scientists, is that, you know, you guys are smart, but it is the whole of the person who leads. It's the whole of the person who comes to work. It's not just that element, you know, and it's the whole of the person. And I think that from that perspective, leadership training or leadership development has become a much more holistic ecosystem of competencies that people need to have, you know, because at the end of the day, being a leader doesn't necessarily mean being a manager or being a director. It can be, you know, you can lead and not have that role in your title. You know, you're leading conversations, you're leading, you know, you might be leading projects, or you're just influencing across a range of roles to get things done. That's still leading, even though you might just be a coordinator or an advisor. You are still leading people all the time. And, you know, and that requires, you know, a holistic approach. And you need to be able to look after yourself. You need to be able to self-regulate your emotions. You need to be able to, you know, big thing we're talking about now is this notion of practicing mindfulness, whatever that looks like. And you don't have to sit cross-legged on a mountaintop with your head shrouded in clouds to be able to do that. And these are a lot of the skills that we're seeing there is a massive demand for in the corporate organizational space.
Yeah, right. And I love what you touched on there about the filling your own cup up. And so I just like to have an awareness of the people who are listening to tune in, that this is also a moment for you to fill up your own cup as a leader, as you're listening to these conversations and as you're participating in the meditations, that is serving you in a way that you can fill up. So you're more than welcome to enjoy in that space. And also, Nathy, what you touched on there is the role of the leader. So that's absolutely the container that we hold leadership in on the show, is that the leader can be a director with a team reporting to them. The relationship to leadership does not need to be one of direct reports. It can be what other people have termed a catalyst that catalyzes change, that some people are really influential. And I know in the tech companies, they have the individual contributors that I think they call them the ICs, right? And so they're highly influential because of their technical expertise and who they are, yet they have no reports. So I think that's a really important point that you've pulled out there.
Yeah, and also, as leaders, it's how are you identifying the skills so that you can coach, mentor, develop, and grow your people too. And I think we touched on that earlier, is that it's not a one size fits all. And I think you mentioned, situational leadership. You've got to lead for the situation. And I know Ken Blanchard has talked about situational leadership, is that you can't develop a person just as the whole. You have to, and I mean this metaphorically, not literally, but you've got to break them down into, what are those roles and responsibilities across a job description, where people might need some freedom. They might need to be able to show their own initiative. But, you also might need people who actually need a high level of support, and being able as a leader to see that and identify that within each and every person is really important as well.
It's so beautiful when you experience a leader who has that capacity. There's some people that I'm thinking that I've worked with before who can do that dance when they're in a meeting, and they can speak to the highly sensitive people. They can cover those off. They can speak to the emotional people. They cover that off. Then they speak to the more analytical people, and they attune to that audience. It's just, it's like watching a graceful dance when these people, there's a particular leader who I worked with at another company, Fiona, who would just flow from meeting to meeting, just so artfully. I wonder, are there any leaders in the public sphere that you think represent what you're talking about here?
Yeah. Do you mean in the public, in the public space of leaders globally?
Yeah, I do, because I mean, I don't want to ask which of the people that you work with do you think?
Yeah,
I was thinking more like a and I don't have a specific example, so I just thought that would be interesting to explore.
Yeah, it is an interesting, you talked about it, you articulated it beautifully. It's like, how do you talk to the sensitive people, the emotional people, the really analytical people, the people who have the big sky blue, the blue sky, big picture visions, and yet, those people who need that level of detail. Look, honestly, off the top of my head, and I'm sure they're out there. Those people who can really, really artfully articulate themselves across, we call them thinking styles. But again, that's a capability that we teach. That everyone has different styles, and you can articulate. But it's being mindful of that. It's even down to starting a meeting. Is like, okay, here's my thinking style, but I might have multitude of different thinking styles. So I'm going to need to articulate what we're here to do. I'm going to need to really to be able to tap into other people, why we're doing this. I'm also going to need to be able to connect with compassion and empathy to those people who are thinking, who's going to be impacted? How am I going to be impacted? But then, of course, it's the how. How are we going to do this? What are the goalposts? What are the timelines? What are the obstacles?
Yeah.
So it is a skill that you can learn. I think that's the beauty of it. And whilst I'm sort of struggling to sort of think of pulling someone out of the air who can do it.
Yeah, I saw something in that, is that the opportunity that's opened up is that if you're listening on this show, that could absolutely be you, if that speaks to you, with what Nathy's just gone through, that framework of knowing your audience and speaking to those. So it doesn't need to be like I saw someone up there on a podium. It can be, the person on the Zoom call with their team pitching an idea, speaking to all those levels at one. It doesn't have to be someone who is, on the big stage.
Absolutely. And I think you really nailed it there, Alana. It's knowing your audience. So many people, when they either have to lead or they have to speak or they have to influence, they're worried about them in the space. And we say, think about your audience. What is it that they need to be able to think, feel, do, know, understand by the time they've left? And that automatically, when you start caring about your audience, that automatically puts you in a position of empathy and compassion. Because when you can say, how do I want them to feel at the end of this? And it might be alerted, it might be alarmed, it might be reassured, it might be confident. But when you can ask yourself, how do these people need to feel at the end of this engagement that I've had with them? And you start there, that starts you from a place of compassion.
Oh, wow. Well, I'd like to jump in and share how I love people to feel with the podcast and the episode that we're having, is that I'd love them to feel expanded. I'd love the people who are listening for them to feel informed. I'd love them to feel awakened and insightful in their own knowledge is really that's the container. So
I love that. I love that. And I'm so delighted that you've asked me to come along to share the little bits of what well, not just me, but the whole team at Phuel do in this space, because I'm certainly not paddling that canoe on my own. We have an amazing team of people who all have that same drive to get people to the end of a day, or to the end of a session, or to the end of a program, and for people to feel changed, to feel like they've found something within themselves that maybe they didn't even know was there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And on that, if people are interested in finding more about you, Nathy, because you have so many things going on, you've written 2 books, you have this wonderful story, and you also have a podcast of your own, and you work at Phuel in addition to that. Where, if someone wanted to connect with you, and maybe it's the podcast or just throwing things out here, where is the best place to connect with you?
Yeah, look, great question. All over the place. Certainly professionally in my capacity at Phuel, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. I am the only Nathy Gaffney there. And then, of course, for all things in that personal influencing space, Nathy.Gaffney on Instagram, and I'm easily findable on Facebook as well under the same name. And of course, thank you, Alana, my podcast, Suck It and See, which kind of takes my love of all things growing and learning from messy mistakes and a previous life in comedy and performing, and mashes it all up. And so we have a little bit of fun there as well.
Oh, so wonderful. Well, check Nathy out if that's something that really speaks to you. I'm going to tune into her podcast when I get a moment. So yes, and Nathy is going to be so kind as to lead us on a quick meditation, and that will wrap up today's episode. So thank you, Nathy, so much for that. I'm going to meditate while this happens. So it'll be
Please
meditation plus, and I'll hand over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to take part in this meditation, it will be approximately 10 minutes in duration, and it's a gratitude practice. So wherever you are, please just get yourself comfortable. If you are comfortable closing your eyes, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, just cast your eyes down and get settled in your seat. Uncross your legs if they're crossed, and just feel both feet firmly, soundly, calmly on the floor. Today, we will practice a visualization that will help you find peace and gratitude. Take a few moments to settle in, close your eyes, begin to relax. As you allow your breath to flow freely in and out, I would like you to clear your mind. The idea isn't to rid your mind of all thought, but to encourage a smooth flow of breathing in. Set an intention to bring peace to the mind. And breathing out, letting go of overthinking, letting go of stress or anxiety, and releasing anything that distracts you from this experience. And now, with one more nice deep inhale and a slow, measured exhale, bring your attention within, noticing your breath, noticing how your body feels, going deeper and deeper inside. Slowly, the outside world is disappearing, and a new scene slowly appears around you. Different shapes and colors come into view, slowly brightening and sharpening as you look around. You find yourself in a lush garden, surrounded by bright green foliage, beautiful statues, vibrant plants, and colorful flowers. Take a few moments to look around, taking in your new surroundings. You are the creator here. Dive deeply into your imagination. Paint this scene, letting your creative juices flow. You can feel the soft grass beneath your feet. You can hear the flutter of birds' wings and their songs coming from the trees. Breathe in fresh, crisp, clean air. Make it real. Walking slowly forward now, you notice a path before you. Its stones are smooth, glistening in the dappled sunlight. Step onto this path and continue to walk forward, curious about where it leads. With each step, you notice you are becoming more and more relaxed, peacefully following this gently winding path. Soon, you hear the sound of trickling water, and you find yourself before a great stone fountain. Take a few moments to visualize this fountain, noticing the subtle details, the curves, the carvings, the color of the streaming, splashing water. You know that the water in this fountain is here to refresh you, and you eagerly cup your hands and dip them into the flow. Bringing your hands to your lips, you sip the water, drinking every last sweet drop. You feel overwhelmingly grateful for this water, a deep appreciation you have never before experienced. You are so thankful for its healing and its rejuvenation. Thankful for the opportunity to give your body what it needs. Once more, cup your hands, gather more water, drinking even more slowly now as you continue to express gratitude for this experience. This fountain inspires you to appreciate the gifts in your life. This fountain never goes dry, So as long as you keep gratitude alive in your heart, feel the water flowing through your body, refreshing you and inspiring even more gratitude to rise within you. Imagine the water that flows from this fountain touching everything in your garden, nourishing it, seeping down into the soil and traveling up the roots of every plant, every flower, providing water for the birds and the small animals that call this garden home. Notice the way the water invigorates these living things, the way it invigorates your body. The grass beneath your feet is supple. The trees above you are strong, their leaves glistening in the sun. Filling your hands, you fill your own cup of gratitude, expressing thanks along with all the living things around you. There is enough for everyone, and you are always welcome to come here to this peaceful sanctuary to fill your cup. Anytime you have forgotten to appreciate the very essence of life, you are called here to bask in this divine experience of receiving and expressing gratitude. Bring to mind all the areas of your life that can use a sprinkling of gratitude. Hold these moments in your mind's eye as you breathe easily and hold the water in your cupped palms once more. Gratefully now, pouring the sacred water on these areas of your life, any stagnancies in your home, work, your relationships, allowing the water to heal and rejuvenate these areas too. Envision your life perking up and blossoming with renewed energy. Appreciation flows effortlessly from you, as effortlessly as the gentle water flowing from this fountain. Breathing easily, simply enjoy your time in this garden for the next few breaths, peaceful and relaxed. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, exhaling and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Now it's time to bid the garden goodbye, once more expressing thanks for this experience, and then slowly following the pebble path back to the beginning. Allow the garden to fade from view with your next exhale, and your current surroundings to materialize again as you inhale deeply, opening your eyes. Always remember that you can return to this garden whenever you would like to fill your cup with gratitude.